Welcome, welcome, welcome back to another week of Excuse Me, Doctor. My name is Dr. Melissa Clark. Please call me Dr. Mel. I am one of your hosts, and I am delighted to be here this evening with you to talk about what we talk about each and every week, and that's making sure that we're giving you the information that you need to make wise, smart health decisions, not just for yourself, but for your family and even for your community. Thank you for joining me, my Be Health Empowered family. If you have not been a listener and you're now a listener, you're now part of the family. And I would love if you could just go ahead and hit that like button if you're checking us out on Facebook. And if you're listening on YouTube, please hit that red subscribe button to keep up with everything we're doing. Really, really appreciate you for that. And then, of course, if you have already been part of the Be Health Empowered family, you know that I have two amazing co-hosts who join me each and every week, bring the word from the streets, and I really have to bring them in right now. So Wayne, Bruce, Lila Mays, come on through. How are y'all doing?
Happy Monday. It's Met Gala Monday.
Met Gala Monday. Yes, it is. So, how are y'all doing?
I'm here.
Bring us the word.
We got to bring that Monday energy in. We're making it a great week for everybody listening, bringing them health news that they can use.
Yay! Happy Monday. I'm great.
Fantastic. Yeah, occasionally see the interns pass along what's going on the web, on our web audience.
Those interns.
And those interns are fantastic. And Ellen Claire Lamb, I love her. She's an incredible viewer. She said, it's a huge tribute that I'm even doing your show tonight because I'm skipping the Met Gala.
We love you. We love you for that.
I have the ticket, but I just didn't want to get into the costume. The costuming for the Met Gala,
I know,
is what costs.
It's a whole nother story. It's a whole nother story.
And I didn't fit it, so
right. You can just come as you are to Excuse Me, Doctor. So
there you go.
Right.
This is my Met Gala hat.
And you and Lila, you already got the Met Gala hat going on. I don't know about Wayne's, but yeah.
Lila, keep a Met Gala hat.
I try to keep a Met Gala hat. I do.
Because you never know.
Fantastic.
All right. Well, here we are. What are we talking about today, Wayne?
Oh, let's get into it, man. We're talking about children and obesity.
Indeed.
Like,
yes.
It's that's near and dear to our hearts.
It is. And it's a topic that a lot of families avoid, but there's so many children that are living every day with it, childhood obesity. So we're going to tackle that today.
Yeah. And, we can't be health empowered unless we talk about the challenges that we face, right?
Yes.
Facts.
Yes.
That's facts. I mean, it's not just about weight. It's about wellness. And I wish somebody would have talked openly about overweight children in childhood when I was growing up, because I was that kid, kind of that kid. I was the kid who could have been bullied, but I wasn't really bullied. I mean, with this mouth, I had this mouth the whole time. I was born with this mouth, so you can only bully me so much.
But the doctor slapped you when you caught. The doctor slapped you when you came out, and you talked back, right?
Yeah, I did talk back. Yeah. But hey, when you're trying to get your footing, I see one of my classmates for junior high. And she was a track star, and I was a chubby kid. I wasn't getting on the track, but she was so nice at that time. She was always the best, and I was that kid. But the it's not just school, it's going shopping for clothes. Like
Yeah.
I had to buy Huskies.
Yeah.
So unless you know that life of the children's for the girls it was the wides or the misses, not the misses, not the MISS,
The MRS.
It was the Mrs. dresses. The
Yeah.
ladies were in almost grown clothes, and if we ran out of clothes at the Husky section, I was getting a small man's suit. They would just go cut it down. I look like Lil Man. That's why they start calling kids Lil Man. I'm just saying.
Yeah.
Okay.
It could be
Well,
traumatizing.
I'm sure, but I think this is an especially important conversation to have in our community. This really hits different. We're talking about some deep-rooted traditions around food, Sunday dinners, those big comfort food dinners, and that whole clean your plate rule. But how do we honor our culture and protect our children's health?
We had that clean your plate rule in my house for sure. But we got to be honest, it's really not just about food. It's also about systems, stress, screen time, and sometimes even survival. It's really a layered issue, especially in Black and brown communities.
Yeah. So, but don't worry, it's not all heavy. We have an amazing guest joining us, one of my favorite guests who's been on the show before, and she knows this topic inside and out. And trust me, they will break it down for us. She will break it down for us.
Yeah. She will. She will. So whether you're a parent, a teacher, an auntie, or someone who just wants to see our kids thrive, this conversation is for you.
So we got to share, start sharing right now with everybody who needs to hear this show. And we also might even touch on adult obesity because she is actually a child and adult obesity expert. So make sure you hit that share. Do it right now. Great time while we go to our weekly recap.
There we are.
There you go.
I mean, Dr. Mel stepping on toes over here, but that's all.
All right, let's jump right in. Diabetes and pregnancy linked to autism. Question?
Well, there is a possible link there. We've heard a lot about much speculation about, why are we seeing rates of autism? And it turns out that children born to mothers with diabetes in pregnancy had a 28% higher chance of being diagnosed with neurodevelopmental disorders like autism, like ADHD, or having learning or motor challenges, muscular challenges, movement issues. So these were the findings from a comprehensive study that was published in The Lancet Diabetes and Endocrinology. That's the name of the journal. And it had data from over 56 million mother-child pairs. So that means they looked at a lot of people before they came to this conclusion.
That's a lot of people. So, Dr. Mel, does it make a difference if the diabetes started in pregnancy versus before a person got pregnant?
Great question. It turns out if the diabetes started before pregnancy, the risk of these neurodevelopmental problems like autism or ADHD was even higher. It was almost 40%.
Oh, wow.
Now, before, panicking or saying, this is a definite, remember this study showed an association, not a direct cause and effect. So there are many things that contribute to a child's development. Gestational diabetes might just be one piece of the puzzle, or it might even be something else that is associated with gestational diabetes, meaning diabetes in pregnancy, that is the link. But definitely this association was seen, and it really makes it that much more imperative that that we think about the factors that lead to diabetes, whether it's before pregnancy or during pregnancy, and really addressing those.
Wow. So all in all, it's really wise to get those regular prenatal checkups because they can help detect the gestational diabetes early. If you have diabetes before, during, or after pregnancy, work with your healthcare provider to monitor and control your blood sugar levels.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So next, Dr. Mel, traditional African diet slows inflammation. So we've talked
Yeah.
before about chronic inflammation in our bodies
Yeah.
and how it's the root cause of all chronic diseases, from diabetes, where we just talked about, to Alzheimer's. And
Mhm.
recently in a recap, I remember we talked about how certain diets, because I'm losing weight presently, how certain diets
Uh-huh.
fuel inflammation in our bodies, like ultra processed foods. And that's just another name for junk foods. And
Mhm.
what's up with that?
So there are two types of foods that are found in traditional African diets. And, Africa is a big place. So I want to specify that they looked at Tanzania in East Africa. And these common food types are different. They occur more frequently than in Western diets, like what we typically eat every day in the States.
Mhm.
And these are fiber rich foods and fermented foods because they can significantly improve the health of our gut. And we've done shows on the microbiome, and hopefully we're going to be doing one again soon. So it improves the health of your gut, the bacterial balance in your gut that's really important for health, and reduces inflammation in your body. But the kicker was there was a recent study done, and it showed that just 2 weeks after adopting a Western diet in place of a traditional African diet that has the high fiber and the fermented foods, it led 25 men in the study to have increased inflammation, a weakened immune system, and
Wow.
disruption of their metabolic pathways, meaning sort of the things that you might see in somebody with prediabetes, right?
Mhm.
Mhm.
But the good news was that switching from a Western diet to the more traditional African diet, or consuming more traditional fermented foods, had anti-inflammatory benefits. Um, and therefore, going the opposite way, you see the opposite thing. You
Okay.
absolutely can get a benefit.
Wow. That's amazing. So what are some of the examples of these kinds of foods?
So, fiber rich foods, we talk about them a lot. So, those are your fruits, your vegetables, your
Okay.
beans and peas, your whole grains like quinoa and barley. And in Tanzania and other African countries, they ferment grains and root vegetables like corn and rice and cassava. But the more common fermented foods that you'll probably run across in your average grocery store in the States are things
Mhm.
like yogurt, kimchi,
Oh,
kombucha,
right. Right.
tempeh, sauerkraut, and they all have in common that they introduce, um, you know, positive bacterial growth. So the good guys, the good bacteria in your
Mhm.
gut to make it more healthy and support your immune function.
Those probiotics we keep hearing
Those
about.
probiotics. That's right.
Okay. Okay. All right. All right. Moving right along. This is a big one. Because I know a lot of people who are like, I don't drink sodas, but taking down a whole bunch of stuff with artificial sweeteners. So do they make you eat more, Dr. Mel? There's some, products that have a bunch of this artificial sweetener stuff in them.
Right. Actually, absolutely. I mean, they might say people make themselves feel good. Well, I don't drink soda with a lot of sugar in it. Like you
Yeah.
said, I drink my diet soda, so I'm okay.
Mhm.
Well, turns out a recent study from University of Southern California published in Nature Metabolism showed that you could actually these things can actually increase your appetite and lead to weight gain. So
Wow.
what they did was they looked at MRI scans of the brain and the blood flow in a region of the brain that affects hunger,
Mm.
after people had artificial sweetener. And the effect was particularly notable in individuals with obesity, and it was stronger in women.
Oh. So
Wow.
you mean to tell me that like equal Splenda, sweet and low, Diet Cokes and whatnot, a bunch of stuff I've been using all these years might be working against me?
Yes, absolutely, because it increases the blood flow to this part of the brain that turns on the hunger signal.
Yeah.
And, as we've talked about, opting for those whole foods, the fiber rich, the fermented stuff. And if you need something sweet, thinking about natural sweeteners like stevia or monk fruit extract are really the better way to go to feel fuller and to avoid cravings and potentially eating things that will lead to weight gain.
And honestly, it really, they do taste a little different, but it's an acquired taste and it's not bad.
Yeah. I always say, if you could do something for your taste buds turn over every 2 weeks. You get all new taste buds in your mouth. If you can do something for a week, that means 50% of your expectations about how something is going to taste will change. And by the end of those 2 weeks, if you've done it consistently, your body is now reset to expect that taste, right? So just get through those 2 weeks. Get through those 2 weeks. You could change your salt set point for salt, your expectations for something sweet, etc.
All right, that's a good reminder.
So
all righty.
You know what's next?
The weekly debunk. Stopping misinformation in its tracks.
So Betty Bama says, so I heard that as a young woman, I should not be taking the pill because it can cause cancer or make me infertile.
I don't know about that. Excuse me, doctor, because I especially don't know about that. I don't know why Betty sent it out that text. Excuse me, Dr. Mel. Is that true?
So, no, it is not true. This myth has gained traction online, leading some women to discontinue or avoid using the pill altogether, which of course can contribute to a rise in unplanned pregnancies, which can obviously be very disruptive to your life, and you just might not be ready to bring a life into the world. So, contrary to these claims, extensive medical research has consistently shown that hormonal contraceptives are safe and effective for most women and don't cause infertility and cancer. There are some women who can't take them. For example, if you have had blood clots before, you're not eligible. So there are other forms of contraception that might be more effective for you. And in some studies, it actually shows the pill may reduce the risk of certain cancers, such as ovarian and endometrial cancer. Endometrial cancer is lining of the womb. And then, of course, ovarian cancer, cancer of the ovary. So absolutely not. Please tell, who was it that sent you the text? Betty?
Betty Bama.
Betty, please tell Betty, no worries. Right.
That's what we
All right.
call her.
Well, on that note, I appreciate y'all. We are going to keep it moving because we have this incredible topic to talk about, and I'm going to see y'all back in just a little bit. So, when we think about childhood, we picture energy, we picture play, possibility, but there are millions of children who are carrying more than just their backpacks. They're carrying the weight of a growing health crisis. We are diving into this really critical issue with somebody who is changing lives, and that is Dr. Yolandra Hancock. She's a pediatrician, TEDx speaker, double boarded in obesity medicine and pediatrics. She is on the faculty at George Washington University School of Public Health, and she combines her hands-on clinical experience with public health expertise and her passion for building vibrant communities. So I am delighted to welcome Dr. Hancock, also known as Dr. Yola, to the show this evening. Welcome, welcome. So glad you're here.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited to be back.
Absolutely. Well, I should say you are a friend of the show. So yes, this is not your first rodeo on Excuse Me, Doctor. So yes, we are delighted to have you back. So let's jump right in. What exactly is childhood obesity? Can you define it for us? And, how do you know that it's just not baby fat that's hanging on, so to speak?
Very good question. So, childhood obesity is a complex, multi system chronic disease that is defined by the use of body mass index. And I know people are like already like a body mass index. That is not what we use. We shouldn't use it because it is not a perfect reflection of weight, but it is what we have, what we call a proxy tool to let us know how appropriate a child's weight is for their height. And we define obesity as a BMI percentile of 95th percentile or higher. So when a little one comes in for their well visit or even for a sick visit, we will measure their height, their weight, and then calculate out their body mass index. It's kilograms per meter squared if you want the calculation. And then we plot it on this growth chart to determine what their percentile is. If they are between 85th and 94th percentile, we classify them as being in the overweight category. If they're at the 95th or greater, then we classify them within the obesity category. When it comes to baby fat, we know that baby fat goes away by the time a little one is between the ages of 3 and 4. It starts to decrease around 12 months of age. And the fat that we're talking about when it comes to obesity is what we call adipose tissue or body fat.
Mm-hmm. Got it. That is great to know those age cutoffs. So if a little one is 6 years old, we can basically assume that is no longer quote unquote baby fat, that this is something that is part of that larger picture that you mentioned, that multi-system, many reasons for obesity existing.
Exactly.
What first, I'm always curious with guests, what got you interested in this field? Is there a backstory or a reason that you were drawn beyond just pediatrics to focus on childhood obesity?
Great question. So, going into medicine, I always knew I wanted to go into pediatrics. I couldn't afford to apply to medical school straight out from college. So, I taught elementary school for a couple of years out in Los Angeles. And it was in that time that I observed little ones who could not run and play and enjoy themselves in the way that their classmates could because of their weight. They would either get tuckered out really fast or sit on the bench and just watch other little ones play. And I would talk to them and I'd ask, when they came back to the classroom, I said, "What happened? How come you didn't go outside and play?" And one of them would say, it hurt my knees, or I just got tired too fast
Mm,
and no one wanted to play with me. And it literally broke my heart. And so when I went
wow.
on to pediatric residency training, I made sure to seek out opportunities to enhance my nutrition education. Actually rotated with nutritionists and dietitians, even though it
Okay.
wasn't an official rotation. When I finished training and went into pediatrics as an attending doctor, I actually sought out opportunities to work on research and develop community-based programs that help to prevent and address obesity, not just from an individual standpoint, but also from a policy standpoint.
Mhm.
There were a couple of kids that really kept me committed to it. Doing the work of obesity medicine can sometimes be challenging, mostly from a policy standpoint. There are a lot
Mhm.
of influences in our society that facilitate little ones developing weight issues. But there was a little boy by the name of Heavy T back in the early 2000s, as my daughter would say. He was in one of our community-based programs. I was lost to follow up. There was actually a story on him in the Washington Informer that came out about 2 years after we stopped seeing him in our community-based program out in Southeast Washington, D.C. And the story served almost as a eulogy because at
Wow.
the age of 18, Heavy T died of
Mm,
obesity related complications. And so
wow.
every time I got ready to stop doing that part of my job, because
Mhm.
it takes a lot of energy, it takes a lot of effort, both on the parts of our families, but mostly for our children and also for us as healthcare providers, I would always think about him and what difference we would have made had we been able to continue in his life. And so that's what keeps me
Sure.
going.
Wow, that's amazing story. And I want to you mentioned the policy pieces. So I want to break that down a little bit and also talk about some of the cultural influences as well. So first let's talk about, the policy pieces. We hear a lot that personal choices or calories in, calories out, that's all it's really about. But how do other systemic issues like food deserts or poverty or racism play into childhood obesity in Black and Brown communities?
I will tell you, in the work that I do, this is one of the most frustrating aspects of it, that from a societal standpoint, obesity is perceived as a personal choice issue. And it negates all of the things that you just talked about, what we in public health collectively call, and I'm sure your members of this amazing group understand them as the social determinants of health. So those factors where a child is born, grows, goes, right? In terms of play and all those things, where they play, pray, learn, and eventually age, that influence their health. And then the political components of it, or the policy components of it, that influence those social determinants. So we collectively call it the socio-political determinants of health. They include things like housing, economics, education, but all of those fall under the umbrella of policy. Without policy changes, we will struggle to really affect change in the space of obesity. And it really is, like, you think about policy, right? So how a community is developed, and I'll use Washington, D.C. as a perfect example. In Ward 3, there are 13 grocery stores. Between Ward 7 and 8, there are 4.
Now, hold on. There are a lot of people who aren't familiar with DC. So Ward 3 is the well-to-do section of the city. Just
Absolutely. Break it down to them, sis. Yeah, it is the well-to-do.
The well-to-do section of the city, yeah.
Absolutely, absolutely. High white concentration, middle to high income. In Wards 7 and 8, predominantly African American, predominantly lower socioeconomic status with less resources. And so when people say, well, why, they shouldn't eat as much fast food. Well, if you live where I used to work, right off of Alabama Avenue, you literally walk through a gauntlet of fast food establishments. At one point in time, you had to take 2 buses to get to a grocery store, not a nice one, but just a grocery store.
Just any old grocery store.
Any old grocery store, right? And so it's making the healthiest choice you can with the resources you have available. And that is usually driven by policy, safe space for physical activity, where you go to receive your health education, economically, what you're able to afford. All of those things are policy driven. And I don't think that we collectively give enough credit. Like even something as basic as the Farm Bill that gets renewed every couple of years. We pay farmers to grow corn and soy. Where do those products end up going? High fructose corn syrup. Where does high fructose corn syrup go into? A lot of our food products. And so even when we're trying to eat healthier, those things are still found in food.
Right.
It's all of
which
those
spike
things
your
working
blood sugar.
together.
Right. The high fructose corn sugar spikes your blood sugar and also leads to your retaining fat. We'll put it that way.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to give a special sort of highlight to something that you brought up, racism, right? So in 1944, there was a Dutch potato famine in Europe. And in 1 year of not having access to food, the children who became adults that were born to those mothers pregnant at the time had a higher risk of diabetes, obesity, and heart disease. So 1 year of a famine, imagine 400 years plus of enslavement, Jim Crow, what we're dealing with now, even in modern day times as it relates to racism. All of those things also impact our health and impact policy.
Right. And our propensity to have diabetes, obesity, high blood pressure. So,
Absolutely.
So that's excellent breaking down of that. Now let's talk about cultural aspects, right?
Yeah.
There's some myths that we hear around obesity in general, whether that be childhood or adult, like that person is just big boned, quote unquote. How can that unintentionally normalize an unhealthy weight? And I've often heard debates about, what you mentioned at the beginning around BMI. Well, that person is just big boned. It's not that they're unhealthy.
Right. I will address big bonedness in its own space, right? Because I hear that often, especially
Yeah.
within my community, right? Even within my family. What I will tell you is that bone density attributes this much to weight. Are there differences in bone density? Absolutely. But the difference as it applies to weight is what we call negligible, very, very tiny. And when we look at our little ones and we're looking at that BMI chart, although BMI doesn't take into consideration things like muscle mass, so people are absolutely correct. When we are diagnosing children with the chronic condition of obesity, it isn't that we're ignoring muscle mass. It isn't that we're ignoring bone density. We take those things into consideration, but what we do know scientifically that bone density does not impact weight in the way that we think that it does. It's very, very tiny. It contributes no more than about 10% of our total body weight. What I also hear is that, oh, they'll just grow out of it. What we know is that if a child is dealing with obesity as a preteen, so before the age of 13, they are almost 65% more likely to go on to become adults with obesity. For adolescents who are dealing with obesity, they are 80% higher to deal with
Wow.
obesity as adults. They're not going to grow out
Wow.
of it. It's not going to happen unless we affect change.
So that really then does speak to some of the long-term consequences of childhood obesity, obviously dealing with it as an adult. What are some of the other long-term consequences outside of that?
Very good question. So, when you think about obesity, especially in childhood, it affects every single system of the body. Heart disease, high blood pressure, high cholesterol, and these diseases are happening at younger ages. There are children as young as
Mhm.
2 that have developed cholesterol
Wow.
in blocking their arteries, right? So if this is starting at 2, imagine what those blood vessels will then look like 10, 20, 30 years from now. So
Yeah.
it's higher, it's increasing the risk of heart disease, increasing the risk of type 2 diabetes, increasing the risk of things like breast cancer, colon cancer, increasing the risk of diabetes, of depression. There have been studies that show that children dealing with obesity have a lower sense of self and a sense of depression. They have a higher sense of depression than children actively battling cancer. And it's a
Wow.
lot to do with being bullied at school. There's a lot
Mhm.
in terms of body image issues. It's the conversations that we sometimes have with children as it relates to
Yeah.
weight. I just recently started partnering with a family. Their previous pediatrician literally told the 17-year-old she was fat
Mm. Yeah.
in her well visit. Using language
Wow.
like that directly
Yes.
affects self-esteem.
Absolutely. Absolutely. So, what are some of the techniques? Well, actually, before I get to that, um, you know, if childhood obesity had a villain in the story, who or what would it be? Would it be sugar? Would it be screen time or something else?
I would honestly say it's policy. I know I'm harping
Mm,
on it a lot, and folks are like, well, what are we supposed to do with policy? You vote,
right.
you go testify before your city and county councils, but policy impacts all of those things. As an example, we could say screen time. Uh, Black children have a 75% higher exposure to fast food and junk food commercials than their white counterparts. So I could say, parents,
Mhm.
monitor what your children are watching, but if big food industries are purposely paying to put in more of these commercials, and you look at some of these ads for certain fast food establishments, you see more of us in these ads. If you go to the Essence Festival, there's a whole area dedicated to certain beverage and food products that I will not mention their names. There's a heavy influence, but it's allowed really based on policy decisions. Where we choose to eat is determined
Mhm.
by policy. And so, if we really focus on health in all policies, that will facilitate us being able to make healthier choices, whether it be food, physical activity, stress management, all of those things.
So, in addition, you mentioned, yeah, you mentioned um, watching what your child, monitoring what your child is exposed to and what they watch. Um, for busy parents that are juggling jobs, caregiving, tight budgets, what are 3 realistic steps outside of voting and testifying that they can take to promote healthier habits for their kids at home?
That's an excellent question. The first thing I would say is to start pre-pregnancy, so that as you're navigating through pregnancy and then into your parenthood, you are modeling healthy behaviors, whether that be what you eat, what you drink, how you stress or how you manage it, how you sleep. All of those are factors, but our little ones are watching us and they do what they see, not what we say. The
Right.
second is to plan ahead. I'm a busy mom, right? I have one 12-year-old who I know the health habits that me and her father are teaching her will last her for the rest of her life. And so I try to make sure I plan ahead. I knew I was going to be out here hanging out with you, my beautiful soror. So I made sure that my daughter was fed before I joined and made sure she had food prepared. She had some salmon, some whole grain rice, and a salad, but I planned ahead, right? And then the third
Mhm.
thing is to think about how we engage with our little ones and not use convenience as a way to facilitate unhealthy habits. So even if you have to eat out, there are choices that you can make. Instead of the waffle fries, get the apple slices. Instead of the sugar beverage, get
Mhm.
some water. Those are ways in which, in real time, you can make that healthier choice. Because no matter where you eat, there is one healthy choice on that menu, especially if you're locally here in Maryland and you live in Prince George's County and or in Montgomery County. There are laws that have been passed that facilitate the healthy choice for children being on the menu. So make sure to access that
Okay.
choice and teach children how to make it.
All right. So it can happen. It's happened in
Yes, ma'am.
Maryland. It can happen in other places. And then you also mentioned too about the 17-year-old who the pediatrician called fat. How can we approach the topic with children without making them feel ashamed or self-conscious?
So what I do in practice is really focus on health. You can be healthy at a size 14, 22, or you could be unhealthy at a size 0. And so when we think through all of the different aspects of health in terms of nutrition, what we eat, what we drink, how we sleep, how we exercise, in terms of our sedentary behavior, all of those things, we go through each of them and we talk through, okay, how do you do in terms of sleep? How much sleep are you getting? And I ask questions like, how do you feel you're doing with your sleep? I could get more sleep. But what do you think sleep is doing to impact your health? And being able to look at all of those aspects of health, and then they set goals in each of those categories, will allow them to achieve what they've set for, but it also helps them to improve their health, whether it be weight, blood pressure, blood sugar, etc. And by focusing on that, that lasts them for a lifetime, as opposed to simply focusing
Mhm.
on weight, because they're looking at a number on a scale. And I have a little one, no matter what he did, the numbers didn't budge. And I know he was working hard. He would come to my office crying. He was so frustrated. And I said, my love, we're not focusing on the scale. What we're going to focus on is you achieving your goals. And as he continued to
Mhm.
focus on achieving his goals with some assistance with medication, right? Because for some little ones, there's only so much that they can do because this is a physiologic issue. So with the
Mhm.
addition of using some medication and him staying committed to achieving his goals, he's lost 50 pounds.
Wow, that's amazing. And you said obesity is a physiologic issue. Another way of saying that is obesity is a disease, right? It is
Absolutely.
not a personal moral failing, as you mentioned
Absolutely.
earlier. So, what are the role of medications? And talk about we see the Ozempic, the Wegovy, the Manjaro commercials on TV. We know all the celebrities are getting on that.
Yeah.
What is the criteria for using it in childhood? What are the age? What are some of the considerations that you have when you're talking with families and children about maybe using that as an alternative or as part
Great
of the treatment
question.
regimen?
Absolutely. I certainly discuss it as part of the plan in managing obesity. Oftentimes, particularly for families, for parents, they'll feel like they're giving up if they put their children on medication. And I explain to them it's no different than asthma. If your child was wheezing, you wouldn't stop his albuterol and tell him to just suck it up. You wouldn't tell him to
Mhm.
just sit down and be still. You would come to see me in order for me to assist you in helping to manage asthma, and obesity is no different. And so, what I like to do is identify the goals as we talked about, allowing my patients to direct how we outline the goals and how they set them. And then, as they're achieving these goals, we start looking at how well are we doing in terms of bringing weight down? Is there anything else that we need to be doing differently? And part of that conversation is when we bring in medication. For children, we can start medication as young as 12. There is a medication called metformin that has historically been used for diabetes. We sometimes will use it in children even younger than 12 for all the Manjaro and Wegovy and all those GLPs. We can't really start it until 12. We follow little ones very closely in terms of their growth because it can sometimes impact their height in terms of how well they're achieving their height goals. But we continue to monitor them to make sure that there are no impacts. And I know there are a lot of people who clutch their pearls like, I can't believe she's starting kids on medication. But just would you clutch your same pearls if it was asthma?
Right. Great point. The one last thing I want to touch on before we go to the audience questions, because I'm sure they're there, is the mental health of our children, right? And you mentioned that that obesity increases depression, but it also goes the other way, right? We know that food can serve as a self-treatment for mental health issues and depression. How do you also work in mental health and mental wellness into talking with someone, adult or child, around weight and obesity?
We do it in a variety of ways. The first is doing a depression questionnaire. So I screen all of my patients, whether they're dealing with obesity or not, at each of their well child or well adolescent visits, just so that we can identify who may be dealing with either depression or anxiety, because food can also be a way of medicating if you're dealing with anxiety as well. And for children who screen positive on those questionnaires, we have a conversation around depression, anxiety, mental health, but we also talk in general about how they may feel that their weight is impacting their health. I had a little one who's being bullied, not by students at his school, but by the administration at his school. And it wasn't until we started asking about feelings of sadness that I learned about that. And he was only 7 years old. So we do screen for it. We talk about it. We talk about ways in which they feel like they're dealing with depression. So if we identify that they are dealing with depression or anxiety, I will ask, what are the things that you do to make yourself feel better? And some of those times it will be food. And we'll talk about their food choices. I give them a quick science lesson about dopamine, the feel-good hormone, and how food impacts that and serotonin. And that's one of the ways in which we're able to find out what can we substitute, right? So I'm not going to tell you not to eat the chocolate. Instead, I'm going to ask, well, what are some ways that can benefit your body that will help you bring that good dopamine, good feeling in? And they'll talk about drawing pictures, writing some rap lyrics, etc. And that helps us substitute something that could impact their health negatively for something that will build them up and sustain them.
Love it. Love it. All right. Well, yes, it is time to bring Wayne and Lila back. I think I encroached on the audience time. My Be Healthy Power family. Sorry about that. But Wayne and Lila, come on back in. Let us know what's going on in the chat. And if there are any questions out there or comments.
Yep. Wayne? He's waiting on me. So I'll go first. I'll go because Yvonne has a few questions actually. Right. And one of them is, I think this is a really interesting question. What's better, school provided lunch, or should children take their own lunch to school?
Yeah.
That's a very good question. It really depends on what's being packed, because at this point, school approved lunches include Lunchables, and so do the ones that are packed by the family. What I would say, because my daughter now, I would pack her lunch. She's now at a school where they provide her lunch, and it's decent. It's not what mommy would pack, but it's not junk food, so I'm happy. You have more control if you're packing the lunch, especially in the current administration. Who knows what they will consider appropriate food lunches, especially if your child is setting goals for themselves. Allow them to have some choice in what they pack in their lunch, because they have a sense of autonomy. They may actually eat the lunch that you pack.
Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point. To sort of piggyback on that, Dr. Yola, what roles do schools and pediatricians play in obesity prevention?
That is such a good question. They play a very critical role. Most children spend the majority of their day at school. And so that means if they're eating breakfast, lunch, and sometimes an aftercare, a snack, or supper, that the food choices that they have available should align with what we know to be healthy. From a pediatrician standpoint, I honestly believe that our roles are critical from the time that parents bring that baby home all the way through until they come back and see us for their in-between college visits. It's serving as a team member, not a dictator, I often say we listen and we don't judge. So tell me that you ate a whole pack of cookies. I need to hear that, because then I'm going to ask, well, what happened? What drove you to do it? What was going on? And then we get into all kind of good stuff in terms of how to address things like depression, anxiety, breakups, etc. But we play a critical role. But we as providers have to understand the role that we play in families not trusting us to be honest about food choice. There are times when, especially if a family's just met me, they're not necessarily going to be honest. But once they get the vibe that, okay, this is a person I can trust, they will let me know, sis, I gave her a can of ravioli, Chef Boyardee, and we had some sweet tea because that's all we had in the house last night. And I'm like, I understand. Let's talk about tomorrow night. What do we do differently? And in creating that space, it allows families to be honest, and we establish a really tight, amazing relationship.
Okay, I'm gonna put you on the spot a little bit.
Do it.
So for families who are on the lower socioeconomic sort of space, what are 3 foods you recommend that are budget conscious and health conscious?
Water.
Okay.
Water is the first one, I would say. The second one is like what I used to do. So I worked out in Southeast DC, and I would look at the circular, all the different grocery stores, and I would point out to my families, all right, listen, y'all, they got apples on sale, 99 cents a pound, cherries, etc. Like being strategic. That's the second thing in terms of shopping, right? Because that now in even places like Southeast, you got Giant, you got Safeway, etc. And the third thing is to take advantage of whatever resources are available to you. So for SNAP benefits, especially during the spring and summer, farmers markets will give you a double buck program. So you buy it and you get twice as much produce for your money. Pay attention to grocery stores. They're real slick on the 1st and 15th. They will increase the prices on the things they know we buy in order to capture all those funds. So know that they are trying to game you. Don't allow it to happen. Be very purposeful in how you spend your money.
Okay.
So shop on the 2nd and the 4th.
And the second and the
I just want to
16th.
take it. I want to take it to the logical conclusion.
The 16th. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Just to follow back on the school question, Tracy Walls asked, do you think start and stop times of schools contribute to obesity? Late starts and late dismissal gives no time for physical activities. What's your thoughts on that?
I think it's more the funding. We don't prioritize physical education and physical activity in the same way that we used to. When we start late and end later, I don't necessarily think that is going to improve the level of physical activity that happens in schools. I think children will just stay up later and wake up later. I think we need to explore sleep habits. I saw a patient yesterday who goes to bed with TikTok playing on his phone. And so that can't provide him with good, what we call REM sleep, or that good deep sleep that allows the body to rest and restore. So I think it's really looking at sleep hygiene, sleep habits, but it's also looking at how we do not prioritize physical education and physical activity in school.
Okay. I have a question. I just want to ask you a question. Let's get to those young people who have gone past their youth and they're now adults and they're now still obese. We see so much messaging every day on the apps that we use, that everybody uses. And recently, they've been promoting peptides. So what are peptides and what do they have to do with obesity?
So one of the theories behind obesity is that it's a sort of a digestive issue. Like we're not fully digesting food. It may take longer to digest food. So by taking peptides, it will facilitate better digestion of food. And we haven't really seen significant studies that show that it's going to directly impact your weight. Really, food choice. What Dr. Clark mentioned earlier in terms of healthy food choices, you want to focus on your healthy green veggies. You want to cut back on those what we call non-nutritive calories. So foods that you eat that taste good but have really no nutritional value. So cookies, chips, etc. And just know that they actually put things in that food that drive that feel-good hormone so that you want to eat more of it. We will mindlessly eat. And so you can take peptides, but if you're not purposeful in how you're choosing to eat, peptides will not serve you well.
That's really interesting.
And bottom line is, you're mentioning that they're not really, the evidence has not been built up through research to show that it really makes a difference, which that's what I kind of zeroed in on. So again, a lot of the stuff on social media, there might be one little study over here, and then people just take it and run with it because they're looking for something to sort of draw people into their site, and it may or may not necessarily be anything to it.
Absolutely. That peptide article was funded by the peptide company.
Right.
Right. Exactly.
Right.
And then there's that. Right.
Yeah. What about genetic testing? Do you think
That's a good question. What I would tell folks is that genetics collectively cannot explain what we're dealing with in terms of the obesity epidemic, right? So there's certain chemicals in the body that are released to help us either appetite or increase appetite. And there is a genetic component to it, but that is not the end all be all. What I would say is to spend $300 to $500 on a genetic test to tell you that your leptin, which is the one that tells you not to eat as much, or ghrelin, the one that tells you to eat more, is higher or lower, is going to let you know that. But then what are you going to do with that information? In medicine, I often say, if I'm not going to do anything about the test, I'm not going to do the test. And so you know that now, what are you going to do about it? It does not change the recommendation. The recommendation is still the same.
Right.
Yep.
And isn't the body amazing? I'm just saying, there are hormones that tell you to eat more. There are hormones that tell you don't eat that. Right. But it's amazing. It's amazing how intricate our bodies are.
Incredible. It's a miracle.
It is a miracle. Dr. Yola, you've worked with so many children and families. Is there one transformational story that stayed with you that you might share with us to inspire our audience?
Absolutely. So there was a family that I worked with a while ago. They were actually featured in NPR. And at the time that I was seeing them, mom actually had some Mickey D's burgers in her purse. And people just tore her up in the comments about how irresponsible she was, how I should just quit what I'm doing, etc. Flash forward 5 years, all 4 of her children lost collectively over 200 pounds.
Oh, wow.
And it was because even in the face of living in limited resources with limited income, she was able to maximize the opportunity to make healthier choices. She removed sugary drinks from her children's diet. She focused on the programs that we talked about. So at the corner markets, you could actually get fruits and veggies. She used her WIC and SNAP benefits in order to buy more fruits and veggies. She involved her kids in the kitchen in terms of them being able to choose which fruits and veggies they ate. They joined me in Zumba classes. They continued on even after I left children's to do those things, and they were able to keep that weight off. And so when I see, even in very challenging circumstances, and this family went through a lot psychosocially, etc. And so I know that if this family was able to do it, even with all those policies that I talked about being in place, that all of us can do it, but it requires a village. I want folks to understand it wasn't just willpower. It wasn't that mom just made a choice. She was in partnership with the folks with whom she worked, with me, with the doctor who followed me after I left children's, in partnership. So she literally leaned in, used the information that she learned, and was able to serve as a transformational agent for her family. And I will say, it's a combination of her making nutritional changes, physical activity changes, etc. Mom went on, she got weight management surgery, and that's something we haven't talked about yet, but it certainly is a part of obesity management. It doesn't mean someone's given up. They just understand that physiologically, this is part of the treatment regimen. And because of all the things that she was able to do for herself and with her family, they were able to and continue to keep the weight off.
That is amazing. And as one last question, then, can you talk about when you think it's appropriate for someone to use weight management surgery, and what age you can start?
Very good question. There are patients that I have either taken care of or familiar with that considered weight management surgery as young as 10, we have to really think about the complications of obesity. And this is a young child who was dealing with very significant obesity related complications. There's something called Blount's disease, which is a bowing of the leg bones. And so for little ones, if they are dealing with a lot of weight, their bones aren't necessarily designed to carry that much weight. So their bones will actually bend out, not necessarily because of a vitamin D deficiency, but literally because of the amount of weight that they're bearing. That, and this child also had diabetes and high blood pressure. We usually see it in preteens to adolescents that we routinely advise, but it also depends on their BMI classification, so that percentile and the total number in terms of BMI. So there are specific criteria that we use, and we don't just send children to surgery. These are children that have gone through their primary pediatrician for weight management. They've gone to secondary, so a specialist like myself. They've even done tertiary care where they've gone to see a higher level, like in an institutional space like children's, where there are full panel of obesity related specialists. And even after all of those things, they have not necessarily been able to achieve the goal, or they've had significant complications. We will then connect them with a pediatric surgeon to consider some form of bariatric surgery.
Wow. Well, thank you. You have just taken us on a journey these past 45 minutes talking with you. Amazing information. We know obesity is a disease in childhood. It extends to adulthood. There are many reasons for it, from policy to choices that are available that might be narrow in even some circumstances, but working as a team, being intentional, planning ahead, voting, and testifying locally can help change for the better. So thank you so much, Dr. Yola. Thank you, Wayne and Lila, of course. As always, thank you, my Be Health Empowered family, for the fantastic questions. And until I see you again, be wise, be well, and be health empowered.